The old woman stood alone in the corner of the diner, her hands trembling as she gripped her cane. Tears rolled down her weathered cheeks. Around her, conversations faded, coffee cups stopped halfway to lips, and for a moment, the room grew quiet. Then she looked at a large biker sitting near the window and whispered words that would change everything. "I just need someone at the funeral." What happened next touched an entire town and proved that kindness can appear from the most unexpected places. Before we begin, please take a moment to subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Here on Kindness Lights, we believe every act of kindness has the power to brighten someone's darkest day. Now let's begin this unforgettable story. It was a chilly morning in a small American town. 91-year-old Margaret Wilson slowly pushed open the door of a local diner she had visited for years. The familiar smell of bacon and fresh coffee usually brought her comfort. But that morning, nothing felt comforting. Just 3 days earlier, Margaret had lost her only son, Daniel. Daniel had been her world. Her husband had passed away nearly 20 years before. Most of her friends were gone. Family members had moved away, and many had lost touch over the years. Now Daniel was gone too. The funeral was scheduled for the following afternoon. But there was one painful problem. Almost nobody was coming. Margaret had spent the entire week making phone calls. Some numbers were disconnected. Some relatives couldn't travel. Others simply said they were too busy. Each rejection felt like another heartbreak. As she sat in the diner that morning, staring into a cup of coffee she barely touched, the loneliness felt unbearable. A few booths away sat a group of bikers wearing leather vests covered with patches. Most customers glanced at them briefly and then looked away. The men were large, heavily tattooed, and looked intimidating. Margaret had noticed them many times before. One of them, a gray-bearded biker named Frank, often smiled politely whenever he saw her enter the diner. That morning, Frank noticed something different. The elderly woman looked devastated. After a few minutes, he stood up and walked over. "Ma'am," he said gently, "are you okay?" Margaret looked up. For a second, she tried to force a smile. Then the tears came. "I don't think I am," she whispered. Frank pulled out a chair and sat beside her. The diner grew quiet as people watched. Margaret explained everything. She talked about Daniel. She talked about losing her husband. She talked about the empty seats that would be waiting at the funeral. Finally, her voice broke completely. "I just need someone at the funeral," she cried. "I don't want my son to leave this world alone." Frank sat silently. The words hit him harder than she realized. Several other bikers had quietly gathered nearby and heard every word. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Frank reached across the table and gently placed his hand over hers. "You won't be alone," he said. Margaret nodded politely, assuming he was simply trying to comfort her. She thanked him and slowly left the diner. What she didn't know was that Frank had already made up his mind. That afternoon, he began making phone calls. Lots of phone calls. He contacted friends from motorcycle clubs across neighboring towns. He shared Margaret's story. A mother who had lost her only child. A funeral with no one to attend. A woman terrified of saying goodbye alone. The response was immediate. One biker called another. Then another. Then dozens more. By evening, the message had spread farther than Frank ever imagined. Men and women from different motorcycle groups wanted to help. Many of them had experienced loss themselves. Many remembered lonely funerals from their own pasts. And all of them understood one thing. Nobody should have to grieve alone. The next afternoon, Margaret arrived at the church. The sky was gray, matching the sadness in her heart. She slowly stepped out of her car and looked toward the parking lot. At first, she thought she was seeing things. Rows of motorcycles stretched as far as she could see. Chrome gleamed under the cloudy sky. Hundreds of riders stood quietly outside the church. Many wore black leather vests. Others wore denim jackets. Some had traveled hours to be there. Margaret froze. A church volunteer noticed her confusion. "Ma'am," he said softly, "they're here for you." Tears instantly filled her eyes. As she walked toward the entrance, the crowd respectfully parted. One by one, the bikers removed their helmets. Many nodded. Some offered gentle smiles. Others simply placed a hand over their hearts. Margaret couldn't speak. She was overwhelmed. Inside the church, every seat was filled. People lined the walls. The empty funeral she had feared no longer existed. Instead, the room overflowed with support. During the service, stories about Daniel were shared. Margaret spoke about his kindness, his humor, and the way he always checked on her every evening. When her voice trembled, dozens of strangers listened with complete attention. No phones. No distractions. Just people showing up for another human being. And that simple act meant everything. After the service, something even more remarkable happened. The bikers didn't rush away. They stayed. They hugged Margaret. They shared meals with her. They listened to her memories. Some helped organize flowers. Others carried chairs and cleaned up afterward. One man spent nearly an hour helping her gather family photographs. Another offered to check on her during the coming weeks. What started as attendance at a funeral had become something much larger. It had become a community. In the weeks that followed, the kindness continued. Several bikers visited Margaret regularly. They helped with groceries. They repaired a broken fence in her backyard. They drove her to doctor's appointments. They called just to make sure she was okay. For the first time in years, Margaret no longer felt invisible. She felt seen. She felt valued. Most importantly, she felt loved. Months later, during a community event, a local reporter asked Margaret about that unforgettable day. She smiled through tears. "I thought I had lost everything," she said. "But those people reminded me that family isn't always the people you're born with. Sometimes family is the people who choose to stand beside you when you need them most." The story quickly spread throughout the region. People were inspired not because of motorcycles or appearances. They were inspired because kindness had broken through assumptions. Many had judged the bikers before ever knowing them. Yet when a lonely woman needed help, they became her greatest source of comfort. Their actions revealed an important truth. You never truly know the goodness inside someone until life gives them a chance to show it. Margaret lived several more years after that funeral. She often spoke about the day hundreds of strangers filled a church for her son. Whenever people asked why she smiled so much, she would tell them the story. And every time she reached the same conclusion. Kindness saved me. Her words were simple. But they carried a powerful message. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give another person isn't money, advice, or even solutions. Sometimes it's simply showing up. Being present. Sitting beside someone during their hardest moment. Letting them know they are not alone. And that is exactly what those bikers did. So if this story touched your heart, remember this: somewhere near you is a person carrying a burden you cannot see. A phone call, a visit, a kind word, or simply your presence could change their life. Kindness doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require wealth. It only requires a willing heart. And when ordinary people choose compassion, extraordinary things happen. Until next time, keep shining your light, keep choosing kindness, and remember, one small act of love can create a ripple that reaches farther than you could ever imagine.